All right, thank you. And thanks for letting me be here today with you. What a wonderful backdrop to talk about sustainability. I mean, this is an amazing facility. And my name is Chris Pennington. I'm the Director of Energy and Sustainability for Iron Mountain Data Centers. And I'm new to Mesa. Didn't know Mesa even existed before about 2 months ago when I was asked to come here and talk about sustainability. And I quickly jumped in to do my research and see what is this Mesa all about. And I discovered that I didn't know anything about the membership. I expected to see the names like, the household names, Warner, Paramount, and they're there. But when I did my research, I found a whole list of companies that I had never even heard of before. So what emerged for me is this realization that it's this really robust, diverse ecosystem of providers doing really unique niche services to deliver content. It's very diverse in many ways, highly interconnected for sure in terms of the reliance from one to another on just exchange of data we talked about earlier. But sustainable? I'm not sure. I searched each of these unfamiliar logos for some sort of public commitment in terms of what their responsibility was for the environment, and didn't find much at all. In fact, raise of hands, who in the room works for an organization that has a public commitment to some sort of climate action plan? Aside from the Iron Mountain guys. A couple? Okay. Yeah. Pretty small percentage of the audience, and that's fine. It's a journey though, and it's an evolution that's changing. And I think the time has come to recognize that it's no longer going to work for businesses to turn this blind eye to this topic of sustainability. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's the case here over the next few minutes. First, a little bit about us. This is our building in Hollywood. It's an icon to the traditional industry that was mentioned earlier. Within the walls of this building live some of the most treasured assets of the entertainment industry that you can think of. And also actually within the walls of this building on the top floor is a studio that helps transition these physical assets into the digital space and helps the owners monetize and access and deploy and share and do all kinds of really cool things with these physical assets. That picture's probably from the 20s. It looks very similar today. Just all the cars around it are obviously much newer. Fast forward to the digital space, which is where I fit within Iron Mountain, and we have our data center business. And within our data center business, our focus is really to kind of be that venue by which our customers can move from physical to digital and potentially back again. Our facilities sit across 3 continents, over 3 million square feet. And as you see here, really enabling that transition from on-site critical environments to the cloud, to hybrid scenarios, out to the edge, where all the eyeballs and ears are. So you can kind of think of us as kind of being this wrapper that exists around this ecosystem that's represented by Mesa members today. So in the center of this image, you think about all the content being created and shared and analyzed and the data established. And we kind of sit around the outside of this, able to capture this if it kind of shoots out to the left there in the form of a physical asset that needs to be kept and monitored and preserved, or to help this intersection between a colo and a cloud and edge. We can address all sides of this kind of physical to digital evolution, and sometimes digital back to physical, all depending on what's necessary. But I'm here to talk about sustainability. And sustainability is more than just butterflies and green trees. So we're not talking about recycling programs for the break room. especially since probably a lot of the break rooms for Mesa members is actually your kitchen. We're doing more remote work now than ever before. So when we talk about sustainability, what does that actually mean? And so what I want to do here is really just kind of help share some insights as a sustainability practitioner in terms of how to understand the sustainability landscape. Because clearly you already understand the M&E landscape very well. So I'm going to hopefully share with you some insights about sustainability so you can kind of start bringing these two concepts together. At the bottom of this is a really important kind of foundation for sustainability, the practice of sustainability, and that's the frameworks that really govern how we talk about success. So there's defined protocols that measure sustainability, and it really comes down to greenhouse gas emissions. So you hear companies talk about net zero carbon goals, carbon emission reductions. There's a framework that's been established by the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, that says, what is a GHG, how do you measure it, and what's it worth? So that framework sits as a foundation for how we talk about actual sustainability. On top of that sits this layer of reporting organizations that effectively keep score. So they take that protocol and they say, okay, if you're a company that has a goal, you should be reporting, and you should be reporting to us so that we can take that information, make it consistent, make it accessible, and make it transparent to other companies so they can see how you're performing. CDP is the most recognized brand there. Over 13,000 companies today report to CDP. Dow Jones Sustainability Index. This is another reporting platform, and there's many more, I just chose two, that says, how is a company performing as it relates to environmental, social, and governance performance? And if they're performing well, they can be included on this Dow Jones Sustainability Index. That's important. Investors are people. People generally like to believe they're doing good things. And so more and more so, investors are turning towards companies that have documented performance around environmental sustainability. And then at the top of this paradigm here is this kind of aspect of what does good look like? And this can become very specific to certain industries, like the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact, which we're a member of. Or it could be more broad, like the Science-Based Target Initiative. Science-Based Target Initiative was really established following the Paris Accord in 2016, where climate scientists said, you know, we don't just have to get better, we actually have to improve by a certain amount in order to combat the impact of climate change. So organizations that set a science-based target have effectively set a goal that says they're not just getting better, they're actually doing their fair share. Iron Mountain has a science-based target goal. It means that we have a path towards reducing our emissions that aligns with what climate scientists say we have to reduce by in order to make sure we're doing our fair share. So this is kind of the structure, okay? It's a set of frameworks that defines protocols that says how you report greenhouse gas emissions and what it means. It's this layer that sits on top of this of where companies are reporting to. And then there's like this kind of what does good look like that sits on top of that. So this is kind of the mental model for you to use. All right, but what are we reporting? Okay, so what does this framework actually mean? And we're gonna get a little bit into or greenhouse gas accounting, GHG accounting speak here, and this is as deep as I'm gonna get. So if your eyes are starting to like glaze over, just hold with me for one more slide on this. In the middle of this diagram is this bullseye, and it says Scope 1 and Scope 2. These are defined terms for GHG emissions. Scope 1 emissions are the emissions that an organization controls directly. So think of the diesel that you might put in your vehicle, or the natural gas that you burn in your office to heat your space. You're controlling these emissions directly. That's your Scope 1. And companies can make big strides on this by operating more efficiently, maybe electrifying their fleet. So these are very much within the control of the organization. Scope 2 emissions are really the emissions from purchased electricity. Yes, you know, we all flip on the light, but we don't actually make the power. But there's emissions associated with making that power. We can control how often we turn the lights on, But when we do, we have to recognize that there's an environmental impact, some greenhouse gas emissions that result from that. So companies for quite some time have been focused on this center bullseye, scope 1, scope 2. What can I control and what emissions am I directly responsible for or kind of indirectly through the electricity that I consume? The evolution around GHG reporting is represented here in these blocks that sit behind that bullseye. And we call these scope 3 emissions. So together we have scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and these are what's defined by the GRI. Scope 3 actually has two pieces. One is the upstream. So what emissions am I responsible for the goods and services that my organization purchases? Because I have a supply chain, and if that supply chain is really carbon intensive, I actually have to report that. Then there's the downstream aspect to this. As I distribute my product or my content and it's consumed, what's the impact of that? That has a footprint as well. Companies are adopting more and more aggressive sustainability goals, primarily because they recognize it makes them better businesses. It makes them more attractive to investors. It makes them identify opportunities to reduce waste, and ultimately it helps improve the environment. And more so, as companies set net zero goals, net zero carbon goals, it has to include all three of these scopes. So think about the MESA organization, think about your business and where you might sit within this diagram. You might be a reporting entity. You might have a clear public commitment to greenhouse gas emissions reductions and know what your scope 1, scope 2 emissions are. Maybe you're working on scope 3. Or maybe you're a provider of content or services, in which case you are somebody else's upstream emissions. So just because you're not reporting doesn't mean your footprint doesn't matter, especially if you're going to be servicing customers who are reporting. So apologies for a bunch of words, but I couldn't think of just a better way to display this. These are some of the goals that companies are setting. So what I've done is I've highlighted the supply chain aspect of this. And these are publicly stated goals. So if you're a content producer or an AI company or some data analyst and you want to provide services to the British Broadcasting Corporation, you should know that they have a public goal to reduce their scope 3 emissions by 28%. If you're going to be part of their supply chain, you should probably start knowing what your footprint is, because they're going to ask you for it. And you're either going to be helping them achieve this goal or possibly hurting them. If you plan to provide any services to Salesforce, Salesforce.com has been out in front of the supply chain management topic early. And so if you already are supplying services to them, you know that they will ask you for what your greenhouse gas emissions are. So it will start most likely by companies saying, tell us about your climate action plan. Tell us about your greenhouse gas emissions. What do you report? Do you report to CDP? There's some more. And this is a small slice of a very large list of companies that are reporting. And if you want to know where this came from, it came from the Science Based Targets Initiative website. And some of these are still emerging. Paramount Global, as an example, they don't have a science-based target yet, but they're planning on setting one in the next 24 months. So the picture I'm painting here is that companies are recognizing that they're really only as green as their supply chain. And so when it comes, I think, to this industry and how everything is being digitized, it really is about understanding where your data resides. Just because it's in the cloud, which is difficult to do, by the way, from what I learned from Rick's presentation, it doesn't mean it's green. I mean, the cloud sounds nice, but it has a footprint. It's a bunch of servers someplace cranking away, consuming electricity. Your cloud provider should be able to tell you what your carbon footprint is. If you have a critical environment, maybe a colo, maybe you've got your servers in a colocation provider someplace, they should be able to tell you what your carbon footprint is. That's what we do to our customers. So I'll leave here with this slide, which just kind of brings back to who we are and what we do and how we support customers on the sustainability journey. A lot of great discussion here about this transition and evolution from traditional to contemporary and how everything's becoming digitalized, and the volume of data is growing exponentially. So we have this ability throughout our portfolio of services to help customers with sustainable solutions, which really means that we're buying 100% renewable energy, we're driving towards energy efficiency, we have water conservation programs for our data centers. Whether it's a physical asset and there's work being done, under that kind of category, or whether it's distributing out to the edge, we're really just here to serve you and serve your needs across this entire evolution from a sustainable perspective. And that is all. Thank you for letting me present. I have a little bit of time. I'm happy to take some questions if anybody wants to shout any out. Sure, yeah. The lady behind you was up first. She's quick on the hand. Yeah. Working from home.
Yeah, working from home. Like, do you think that companies will have to start also taking into consideration all of that stuff?
I do. I think the remote workforce is, you can't ignore it. You can't say, oh, it doesn't exist. It doesn't have a footprint because they're not in my office. So companies are recognizing and starting to allocate a certain amount of energy consumption from those employees, and they can offset that, by buying more renewable power separately. So, yeah, it's a great topic, and recognition of this remote workforce is absolutely exists within kind of sustainability reporting today. Sir. Yeah. So I'm getting a new appreciation for just like how important it is to optimize your cloud purchase through Rick's presentation earlier. What we see in our co-location facilities, and I'll take a step back. Our data center model is primarily co-location. So we create the four walls of a facility, have robust power systems, rich connectivity to the internet and cloud on-ramps, and the customers move their IT equipment in. And so the customer is able to create this critical environment in a far more cost-effective way than building out their own on-prem site. So I think that model has proven to be very efficient because it enables customers to scale very well, the co-location model, that is. In fact, when you take a look at the total amount of IT compute over the last 7 years, let's say, I think it's gone up like 500% or something like that. But energy for IT compute has stayed relatively flat. And a lot of that is because the energy efficiency of data centers is improving because it's moving from on-prem facilities, which naturally are just kind of inefficient, to more of a co-location type model, which is more efficient. So there's actually some really cool data that just shows how the efficiency of compute is getting much, much more efficient, although it's starting to plateau a little bit. Yeah. The question is the impact of kind of this distributed model or decentralization of platforms, and is that more sustainable, or maybe you're not as sustainable? I don't know. Maybe is the right answer to your question. I think it's an interesting topic. I think everything is becoming more distributed. I think there's a real risk that if we don't closely monitor and kind of optimize these solutions, that it could become kind of just a lot more. But is it being optimized? I don't know, actually. But thanks for asking that question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd actually like to play off that as well, because Edge allows for decentralization in a way where it's kind of the idea of the solution to pollution is dilution. It's not necessarily impacting a single area and distributing that across an area. You're using less resources in a confined area. So have you guys been doing a lot of studies on edge and carbon footprint of edge?
Yeah, yeah. So edge is a thing, right? I mean, it's all about reducing latency, getting the right compute close to where the eyeballs and ears are that consume all this information. I think that the future will be naturally a scenario in which it doesn't all move to the edge. There is like this balanced need for like limited backhauling, co-location data centers, small edge. I think it is a structured landscape like that. And I think we also need to recognize that not all data is the same. And so as we think about some of the traditional solutions around tape archival and the role that can still play, I think that's an important piece of optimizing, because it takes a lot less energy to store a tape in a room than it does to keep a disk spinning. And so the ability to manage content across not just geography from kind of edge to colo to central, but also just the category. Is it archival? Is it active? It's going to become a very challenging landscape with lots of solutions that needs to be considered. That's not really an answer, but that's the way I see it coming around. But I loved your phrase. What was it again? Is dilution. The solution of pollution is dilution. Got it. Thanks.
I'm getting faster. So what makes your data centers, like the physical data centers, better or different than the leading architecture firms, the ones that are just being cranked out, mass produced?
Yeah, and data centers are expanding super fast, right? So everybody's on this construction boom right now, and we have major supply chain challenges. Backup power generation plants are sometimes 2 years back ordered. So we're all going as fast as we can. At Iron Mountain, we recognize the responsibility to have a sustainability purpose that was strong. And part of that starts with our commitment to renewable energy. So as a co-location provider, we're buying power for the facility and then distributing it to our clients as they need it. So we need to be buying the power that they would choose to buy on their own in support of their corporate goals. We are their energy supply chain. So renewable energy to our data centers is kind of what differentiates us, first of all. But from a structure standpoint, I think we're the only global data center operator that's committed to building each new co-location facility to the BREEAM green building standard. Now there's several green building standards out there. LEED is another prominent one, but we recognize that BREEAM, which actually originated in the UK, it actually holds a higher standard. So every time that we go to break ground on a new facility, we take a comprehensive view, everything from site